Okay, the recording has started.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening as we talk with Cetonia Weston-Roy. You may know her as the woman with the bookstore on a bicycle. Cetonia also works as a behavioral technician for children with autism. She is also an author and recently self-published a children's book called The Misadventures of Tony Macaroni. She is also the founder of the Black Authors Collective. And now I would also like to introduce Paul Wellington. Paul is the branch library services assistant at Milwaukee Public Library East Branch. He is also the author of Black Built, History and Architecture in the Black Community, which discusses the work of Black architects in the United States. Additionally, Paul is the co-founder of MKE Black, a local app and nonprofit that advocates for Milwaukee area businesses. Okay, let's begin.
All right, thank you very much, Mary, for the introduction. We'll go ahead and get started. So, Cetonia, thank you once again for joining MPL for the spotlight. We'll go ahead and get started. So, what inspired you to write your first book?
Well, I kind of been writing things down since I've been pretty young, but this particular book first came to mind. I was one of the times I came back from school during a holiday from college, and it always seemed like one of the many things just every time there was a holiday people would do is they bring up some crazy story of something I did as a child. So after a while, through the teenage years, it was sort of like, oh, eye roll, whatever, I don't care. But as I got into that age group, I was like, this is actually really funny. And I think that would make a great book. So that was the very first time I thought of the book and using those funny stories and putting them into book format. And then it took me quite a long time. So that was like 2011, 2012. And then as the years went by, it just got clearer and clearer until I finally forced myself to just sit down and get started writing it.
And was the book self-published?
Yes.
It was self-published. What was that process
Yeah, I did.
for you? Was it difficult? Do you find it kind of easy to go through?
It's definitely difficult because there's a lot of things that fall on you. You have to find the editor, proofreader, the illustrator. You have to get your ISBN. You have to trademark it, copyright it, all of that yourself. So it was a learning curve, especially with it being my first time. So yeah, I'd say it was a little tough, but nothing too bad, especially since I knew I wanted to get the book out there.
Yeah, I was in the same process too with my book, Black Built. It definitely was a challenge to find an editor, compile the book myself, lay all the arrangements out, but I totally understand the process going through that. Do you have any plans for future books after your first one?
Yeah, so I'm currently in the movement for the second in the series for Tony Macaroni, and then I have one children's book separate from the series on the back burner, and a fantasy book that's a slow simmer right now, so that might be a while.
And then where can we purchase the book currently?
It is on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all of those sites, but it's also for sale on my Niche Book Bar site as well at findyournichemke.com.
Awesome. So then, as a kid, were you really into reading? Did you enjoy books growing up?
Yes, I'd like to say early though, when I was first learning, I don't remember this, of course, I only remember the good. I guess I did not like to read a lot. So my mom would always laugh, like, it's funny that I can't get your nose out of a book when you would fuss so much. But I'm sure that had something to do with not knowing how to read. So once I got going, and I remember kind of forced library trips, and then all of a sudden the library was the best place to go during the week. So yes, I did love reading.
The libraries were really integral in you learning to love to read, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that was definitely, my stepdad who I refer to as just my dad, but just to specify which one, was definitely the one who really introduced a love of reading to me, I'd say, and introduced it, forced it until it finally became something I loved as well.
So what were some of your favorite books growing up as a kid?
I really liked books like Anne of Green Gables. You know, there was something in each one. Nancy Drew. I liked the Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing. Junie B. Jones. I think it was like Bailey Elementary School Kids or something like that. Pretty much anything that had main girl characters usually that were going against the grain in some way, or, you know, or just quirky things were happening in their life.
So then, for those who don't know, Cetonia and I first met, I believe it was last summer of 2019. You hosted several author events. So could you tell us what led to you hosting such events?
Well, I had niche in mind for quite a while. So when I was starting on the road to knowing I wanted to do a bookstore, my first thought was I needed to know the local authors. And I also needed to know the local community more and what they felt about Black literature, if they were looking for it, you know, if this was something that was, you know, helping anyone. So that's when I first started Black Authors Pop Up. And really, I just searched through Facebook. I just put Black Authors Milwaukee, and I looked through old posts and pages, and I messaged people until I finally had enough say yes to put together an event.
What was the feedback from those events from the Black authors?
Well, I recorded data throughout all of that. I recorded how many people were coming, you know, ages, who was coming, and then I would try to talk to them as well. Mostly the feedback was they loved to hear the authors talk about their books. They loved that there was something in Milwaukee that was doing this, and I had started hearing things such as you know, that the bookstore had closed, and this kind of helped for some people fill a void. And others were just, I really want to get back into reading, so this is perfect.
I think the best thing for me at your author events was just meeting like-minded people. I mean, I think it was really helpful to kind of learn how they went through the same process I went through, kind of gave you ideas. So I definitely found it very useful. I really appreciate you hosting those events last summer.
And they will continue. They were supposed to this summer, but as we know, a lot of things were supposed to happen this summer that didn't.
But actually, this summer you introduced your book bike, which is awesome, by the way. So where did that idea stem from?
So it was just a pivot. I'd been doing Black Authors Pop Up, and I knew I wanted to switch to, because I had niche in the background. I knew what the name was. You know, I had all these ideas, and so I knew I wanted to introduce it in 2020 and get it incorporated. And I was trying to get loans for the brick and mortar. And just as I was in another loan process, COVID hits, and suddenly, you know, no one wants to give money when nothing can even be open, right, for you to pay it back. So I knew I wanted to still introduce niche to everyone. So my thought was like, okay, well, how can I do this being safe and, you know, in the best way I could? So I knew a bus was out of the, that was my first thought, but I was like, I definitely can't do a whole bus. And I did think of a bike, and then I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. You can't fit a bookcase on a bike. And then I like to tell people, I literally was just driving and saw a guy with a cooler, like a real cooler on a bike that he had fitted somehow on this bike. And I was just like, if he can figure a cooler on a bike, I can figure out a bookcase on a bike. So that's how that started.
That's awesome. So what kind of events did you take your book bike to this summer?
I went to the Blackout Block Party. I went to the Bleat Street Market. I did some gardeners markets, as well as stories in the park in Carver Park. I also took it to the Sherman Phoenix quite often. So a little bit of it. I did bring it to Moody Park as well.
Cetonia, that's a lot of exercise riding that bicycle with all those books on the back. How do you do it?
Well, I'd like to start to say I am not a bike rider. I actually had not been that's a pretty good story. I had not been on a bike in probably a good 10 to 12 years before this. And when I had the bike all put together, I went to, I don't want to say their name right, but they're a local Black-led biking community. I think it's Red, Bike, and Green, perhaps. And they were doing a Juneteenth ride. So I brought my bike and I flailed all over the place and got my crashing done at that point with that ride. And then I just went out. The longest I've ever done back and forth trip has been 6 miles. And that was a one-time thing. I was like, oh my goodness, I really dove into this. I need to scale it back a little bit. So usually the most I would do was about 2 miles.
Right, because I think I read somewhere that your basket or your bookshelf holds 100 books at a time. So do you travel with that many on a regular basis?
When I started out, I did, because, you have to understand the kinks, I guess. So you have to do maybe not the smartest thing yet. So I did pack it so the bottom part opens up and you put stuffed books under there, and then the top part also opens up, and I was stuffing books in there. And so I put every book I bought, which was I think it might have even been over 200 at that time. No, it was about 100, because some were copies that I had bought, the same copies, and I had to go up a hill with those, and I couldn't even bike it. I had to push it up this hill. Wow. And I was just like, okay, I won't be bringing every book that I have from now on. I'll switch them in and out.
I recall seeing you one time. We were just left one of your events, and we saw you pushing the book bike up a hill, and felt really bad for you.
That, I think we're talking about the same event. I didn't see you guys, but yes, that was me pushing up the bike up the hill.
Well, I really do appreciate your book bike. I like how the books are on display for everyone to see. I took my daughter to one of your events, and she was just really just excited to see all the kids' books you had for her to check out or to purchase. Going back to your bookstore, I know that you reached your goal on Kickstarter recently, so congratulations for that.
Thank you. Yes,
actually,
that was a lot.
You surpassed your goal, I saw.
Yes.
Yeah, so I still have about 20 days left on it, and some people are still giving, so that's awesome. I'm not really what's the word, putting it out there anymore now that we've hit the goal, but just any extra goes to more inventory, starting inventory.
So now that you reached your goal, what are the next steps for a niche book bar?
So the next steps are to get licensing, the lease signed, construction, piling up what that starting inventory will look like, taking more courses, business courses, in terms of like maybe understanding QuickBooks. I've been doing meetings with local people. The Brownsville Collective has been pretty helpful in answering questions about opening a store. So just continuing to learn and keep going.
So then, where would the bookstore be located? Well, you mentioned Brownsville. What can you tell us the exact address, if that's possible?
Yeah, so the exact address is 331 West North Avenue. So that is, and you won't really notice it because it was turned into, the storefront was taken away some years ago. And so it was just one big, I think it was Foot Locker at some point. So now it still has the address, but it's just a matter of putting the storefront back on.
And then when do you expect to open the store? I know you have plans to open it this year, but obviously COVID happened. And do you want to open the store next year, perhaps?
Yeah, so I'm hoping for maybe mid-May of 2021, and we'll see in what capacity I'll open, whether, this is all done with or not. We'll see, maybe it's just limited browsing or curbside pickup at first, and then branching out into events as we're able.
So the bookstore will also have a wine bar to go with it. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, so I plan to have a small wine selection. So you're not going to find, anything flown in from France and Paris, anything like that, but just a nice red, whites, some maybe rosé, maybe a mimosa, some Saturdays.
Awesome. So then, after the pandemic, what kind of events can we expect to see from Niche Book Bar?
You can definitely expect story times. You can expect author events and book signings. I hope to get some, book readings, poetry readings going. You'll see book clubs coming in, so they might be having their own little separate event in the background. Yeah, that's what I expect to start off with, but I'm sure as time goes on, we'll branch out.
I'm really excited for all that. So you're on track to become the state's first Black-owned bookstore since the Reader's Choice closed in 2017. Are you feeling any pressure from the community to really succeed? I would say.
I wouldn't say anyone's giving me any pressure, and I can't say I particularly feel. I think I feel a little anxious to get going, and also, I want to last. I don't just want to get started. I want to be something that lasts in the community. But I'd say I haven't felt too pressured. I just know I'm going to give, what niche is to everyone, and welcome everybody in to share with that.
I think having the wine bar is really a great aspect, and it should help you thrive, hopefully, going forward. And then, are there any other ways besides donations that the community can support you in your efforts to open the bookstore?
I have my online bookstore currently up on the website for findyournichemke.com. Definitely shop local. I know it's so easy to buy from Amazon. We've gotten so used to that 2-day shipping and just how fast it is. But, shopping local really does help. So just if you're looking for a book, stop by.
So then throughout your process of starting your bookstore, have there been any individuals or organizations or groups that have been influential throughout towards your success?
Yeah, I'd say LISC has been really helpful with their Brew City match program. Deshay, because I knew starting pretty early that Bronzeville was where I wanted to set up shop. So Deshay over at the MLK bid has been helpful. The Monk Chamber of Commerce has been pretty helpful. And yeah, you guys for reaching out, of course. The local businesses that partnered with me to pop up last summer to really build the momentum for this. And that's like Coffee Makes You Black, the Bronzeville Collective, Rise and Grind helped out. So yeah, a lot of people. I think something I've definitely learned from this process is you think of entrepreneurship as very singular, but it's really not. It's very much a group effort, and plenty of people have helped me through this process.
Absolutely. No one can do everything alone. I think it's great that you are really inspired by the community. And one last question for you. What is the importance of supporting and reading literature by Afro-American authors?
Often when I talk about niche, I talk about how we need to make varied Black literature more accessible. And part of helping the accessibility is buying and reading those books. because a lot of the marketing companies say, oh, well, we don't market these books because people don't buy them. Well, people don't buy them because you don't market them. So I think it's very important to, if you're looking to specifically look for these kinds of books, really, there's plenty of bookstores that cater to Black books, and just try your best to search them out even if they're not being marketed so well at this time. And also look locally. You know, we're in Milwaukee. Look locally for your authors. I was very surprised starting out just still how many authors there are hiding in all the corners of Milwaukee. So look local as well.
That's a good point. So is there a way that anyone can find your people who are part of your collective? Is that on your website currently, or how else can we find information about that?
So right now, there's an album on Facebook. That's the Black Authors Collective, and it has a directory of the author's name and the book. The group is also attached to Facebook. I would definitely say, quite honestly, I'm still figuring out the best way to really bring this out, but I know that I plan to get a section on bookshop.org that's dedicated to the authors in that collective, and then also, of course, space in the building for that collective.
That's really great. I know it's difficult to find a list of local Black authors. I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. Like, where do you begin to find them? So I think what you're doing is very much needed in the community right now. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right now, we'll open up the floor to any questions anyone may have.
I have a few for you, Cetonia. I'm a big book reader. I have been ever since childhood. So I saw that there was a picture of you holding Charlotte's Web as a little girl. Was that a favorite book of yours, or what was your favorite book when you were growing up?
I think I had a favorite book a week, quite honestly. But I do remember having that in my collection. But I would say the ones that stood out for me more, Anne of Green Gables, something spoke to me about a girl who didn't quite fit in, with her red hair, and she used really big words that, were too big for her age, people always said. And I would also try to use big words, because after reading Anne of Green Gables, I'd say Anne Cameron's books, like the stories Julian tells, Gloria's Way, Gloria Rising, all of that kind of series of children's books was really instrumental for me as well, because that was the very first time I'd read a book with Black children and they weren't going through some kind of suffering. I loved Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. I was just talking to someone earlier about that, but I still remember that heaviness, and every other book that I can think of that same theme of Jim Crow and poverty and being treated second class. And, I remember that wariness. So I would definitely say Anne Cameron's books were very big for me. Junie B. Jones, Beverly Cleary. Yeah, those were probably the big ones.
What is the one book that you feel significantly impacted your life, or just still to this day kind of gives you pause? And it doesn't have to be from childhood. It could be something you've read as an adult.
I would say that Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye was one of them, because that one put into words of what I was feeling. I read that one pretty young too, and I don't think it was school reading. When, I was just talking about how there's this part in the book where she's kind of lamenting about why they're not good enough, or why there's this feeling that they're not pretty, or they're not good, or they're dirty, or all these things. And I was just like, that's when I was able to put that into words. And I think even though that was kind of a sad toned book, I still kind of felt more aware of myself and that I was okay. And then another book I would say that impacted me in a different way was Fledgling by Octavia Butler, because I was on the Octavia Butler ship pretty late. And I think her fiction centered around a Black vampire. And that was the first time I'd ever seen that in a main character. And all of her books are like that. These fanciful tales with Black main characters. I think that's what really set the groundwork for niche.
What is the one book that you think people should be reading right now by a Black author?
There's so many. I don't even know if I can think of just one. I have a stack of books back here. Okay, I have stacks of books right there. That's why I looked over here. I really enjoyed Freshwater. I can't remember the author off the bat, but it is a beautiful pink cover with a snake on it. I really love the Inheritance Trilogy by, I believe, N.K. Jemisin. And I always read her name. I never say it out loud. I think it's Nendi Okorafor. She has books like Binti, Who Fears Death. So mostly a lot of my choices are the sci-fi speculative fiction section of things. But I would also say Stamped from the Beginning was huge for me as well. I read that, I think, a year ago. And just how that whole history of how anti-Blackness kind of seeped into not just America, but the world. And just his historical just facts and lining it all up. I really loved that.
When are you hoping to open the doors to Niche Book Bar?
So I'm thinking mid-May of next year.
Oh, good. Excellent. We do have some comments / questions in the chat room. Anne Marie says, you mentioned book clubs meeting at the store. Is there a room available for clubs to meet? If you know the layout of the space yet?
Yes, well, currently with the sort of the CAD layout that's currently up, there is not so much a full private room, but there is a semi-private room where things will shut around it if you book it for a private event. Otherwise, it's just available for everyone to sit back there and enjoy.
So another question from Allison. She says, Cetonia, will your bookstore deal mainly with new publications, or will there be secondhand or antiquarian books by Black authors too?
It will be a new and used bookstore, so you may find kind of those older publications like Richard Wright in there, and you'll find new bestsellers as well.
If we have some other questions out there in the audience, you can feel free to unmute your microphone one at a time, please, and ask your questions.
Hi, my name's Rachel. Wondering if you were native to Milwaukee and if you are newer to the community.
Rachel, I am newer to the community. I was actually born in Florida and then grew up between my mother and father in Racine, Wisconsin to Jacksonville, Florida. So I really moved here the same year that the Reader's Choice closed down, so 2017. So I'm pretty new to Milwaukee.
I would imagine riding a bike with 100 books on the back would be much easier in Florida, although you're not doing it in the winter time here in Milwaukee. So there is that. But yeah, you probably do a little bit when it's not quite as snowy or cold out.
October, yeah, I think October is the cutoff. So
Okay.
that's what the cutoff was this year. I think I'll keep it that way. We've had some really warm days this December. I didn't wear a coat today, and that was very strange.
Yeah, our winters haven't been too terribly bad, as I recall, the last few years. So you lucked out.
I have a question. So I know you're really busy right now, Cetonia, but do you have any plans for any virtual events?
Let's see, my last one was in November. I've been trying to switch to Instagram Live because that seems like a good platform to get everybody on. But I think I don't expect to do another one until about February, just so I can straighten everything out, make sure I don't put too much on my plate.
Okay.
Cetonia, you are doing an awful lot. I mean, you're writing books, you're hosting events for Black authors, you're doing the bookstore, you're doing the bike. How do you do it all? Do you feel like you're overwhelmed, or do you feel like this is just so exciting you don't know how to stop?
Oh, there's definitely always moments, I think, of being a little overwhelmed, because there is so much when you're an entrepreneur. I think there's so much that does fall on you to do. So there definitely are moments of being overwhelmed. But I think what's good about being overwhelmed versus being overwhelmed when I was full-time working, was that this is something I really love. So it's easier, I think, to come back and recuperate from those moments of being overwhelmed when it's something you really love.
You can hear the passion for what you're doing in your voice, and your eyes light up. And yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think the neighborhood is going to welcome you with open arms, and I anticipate your business will be very successful.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for hosting this. Good to see you again, Paul. I know it's been a while.
One more question from librarian Beth. She really loves romance authors, and she's wondering if you plan on stocking any romance novels by indie Black authors.
By indie Black authors?
Yes.
I do plan to have a romance section. Yeah, so I plan to have a romance section, and I plan to stock indie authors. So yes.
She's very excited for that. She's very happy.
Yes, she is.
This is Rachel again. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
What age group is the Tony Macaroni book for kids?
I would say that's anywhere from 6 to 12, 6 to 11. It is an early chapter reader. My own son, who is just turning 6, was 5, listening to it one chapter at a time with me as I wrote it. And he enjoys it, especially now that when it had pictures. So I would say that's a good age group.
Thanks.
Well, any more questions? Well, this pandemic has made it hard for everyone, including the library. And I just want to let you all know that you can still find ways of keeping in touch by visiting www.mpl.org/stay-connected. And you will find there the calendar of events, resources, links to the databases. It's truly the way to stay connected with what is happening with the Milwaukee Public Library now and in the future. So we'll get through this pandemic somehow, everybody. Cetonia, it was a pleasure to talk with you tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me on. And
I'm
thank you all for tuning in.
I think I share with everyone else that's attended that we're all very excited to see your new bookstore. And I'm confident you're going to be getting large crowds.
Yes, so just follow up on Instagram or Facebook at Niche Book Bar, NICHE, and you can follow the progress with that.
Sounds good.
Oh, great. So have a good night, everyone.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.